Hello and welcome to The Nation. I'm ELANE NOOR Abdullah. Now our focus today is on Malaysia's economy, a topic that impacts all of us. Now as we step into 2025, questions abound about the economic trajectory of our nation. What are the key challenges and opportunities on the horizon? What trends and policies will shape Malaysia's growth in the year ahead? To help us unpack these crucial insights, we are honoured to have with us Datuk Seri Mohamed Iqbal Rawther, Deputy Chairman of the KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific. He is also the Chairman of the Economic Club of Kuala Lumpur ECKL. Datuk Seri, thank you for being here today.
Nice to have.
It's a pleasure to have you in the studio as we unpack this really, it can be a little bit of a heavy topic, but I think you'll help us break that down so that we are able to understand what we can forecast and predict for the coming sort of couple of months. So Datuk Seri, KSI has projected Malaysia's GDP growth to a moderate at 4.9% in 2025, slightly exceeding the official target. Could you perhaps elaborate on the key factors driving this forecast and what differentiates it from previous years?
First, thank you very much for inviting me to Bernama and for this exchange of views. Economics is not exact science, so we depend on quite a number of parameters which determine in the forecast. So what has been forecast for Malaysia in the budget for 2025 is that the GDP growth is likely to be between 4.5 to 5.5. There is no exact figure that is given. That indicates that it is very difficult to predict because there are so many uncertainties and perhaps the ramifications both internally as well as externally. But after the budget and currently, you'll find that this interview is also timed in a way, I do not know you planned it or what.
Yes, of course.
Is that the second finance minister gave an interview to Bloomberg and he said that the Malaysian economy will grow at 5%. So in terms of what we predicted at 4.9 is within the range of 4.5 to 5.5. But others, for example, externally based commentators, for example, the Japanese Nomura, did make an indication that the Malaysian economy may even grow beyond 5.5.
That's interesting news.
Yeah. So emphasis that is being given to different components of what contributes to the GDP. GDP, as you know, for generally for the layman or for those who are informed, is consumption, investment, and also you look at export and import, the net that is done by Malaysia as a nation. So taking into this and factoring in what the government would do, because the government's expenditure also is a very important component of that. So the budget gave a very good start for 2025, giving around 421 billion in terms of both operational as well as development budget. So this is a boost. So consumption is likely to be high, and also investment is likely to be high, and the government is empowering this, empowering also the business sectors, and the export orientation, our commodities and other things are doing well. So the indications is that the economy in 2025 should be doing within the range. Whether it will go beyond the 5.5 is a bit too early for anyone to predict.
Now, it is looking positive. I think the energy around, you can feel as well, is feeling a little bit uplifted. Now, let's talk about domestic demand, Datuk Seri. Domestic demand is anticipated to be the primary driver of growth, supported by factors such as wage increases, which is part of the budget as well, and EPF withdrawals. How sustainable is this reliance on domestic demand over the long term, Datuk Seri?
Yeah, as I said earlier, when you talk about consumption, the consumer behavior to spend more, if there is money to spend, And if you get your income, and if your income is rising, then whether the income is stable and rising in a way, and how much of that is used for consumption is important. Because a lot of people will say higher income, more savings, not put it into consumption.
Right.
But because prices have gone up, I won't say very high, because we still look at inflation trends within the economy. So consumption is going to drive. But when you talk about the increase in wages, the government has put in increase in wages to some extent. And then the minimum wage has gone up from 1,500 to 1,750. It will affect quite a large pool of people, because on the low wage people, this is a good positive side. But consistent with this, whether we are going to have wage increases in the private sector, particularly in the SME sector, which has been very vulnerable during the COVID and finding it difficult to revive back to their normal operations. So there are some challenges within that. Government spending is going to be pretty good because of the high budget, and government is also very, very careful to see that as a result of a large budget, you do not go into a deficit kind of a situation. Our commodities are doing quite well, petroleum and of course plantation industries. So this should give us a net export, which will be a good component for the growth factor.
And that's good news indeed. With regards to that, KSI actually reported highlight substantial commitments from GLICs and GLCs as well. What role do you see these investments playing in driving growth? This is particularly in infrastructure and industrial sectors.
Yes, when the government announced in the budget, the amount of development expenditure is not very high compared to previous years. It's about roughly 80 billion or so. So can we add to this development expenditure, and where would the source come from? This source is likely to come from GLCs, the government-linked companies, and the government-linked investment companies. So GLCs are now required, and where would they derive this amount of money for additional investment? Operationally, they will be trying to meet their own operational imperatives. But when it comes to assets which have not been monetized and used, so government is putting a pressure, I would say, to the GLCs and GLICs that you bring in your assets operationally into, and then that will generate a lot of value which will go into infrastructure and other development to supplement what government is doing in the 2025 budget.
Now there's a lot of pressure, as you mentioned, with regards to the public-private partnerships as well, in order for them to be able to help with boosting that funding and that economy development as well. And with the next where as an open economy, I mean Malaysia, we're in an open economy. Malaysia faces risks from global uncertainties, and we're not alone in this. Everyone faces these uncertainties, including new tariff threats. And what strategies can Malaysia employ to mitigate these external challenges while sustaining its growth trajectory? Because the global trade market, everything is changing. It's so volatile at this point of time. What are your thoughts, Dr. Seri?
Yes, I think it is a reality. It is out there. But the prime mover of this, what we call looking inwards, whether it is the US or any other country, and operationally this doesn't give globalization a chance. But Malaysia, when we look at from our historical base, we have been exposed to the global trade. We are a trading nation. And this new government under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has said that we need to put ourselves as one of the leading trading nations back to our strength. So the strength was already inherent in the economy, and now we want to do it. Notwithstanding what the US is saying in terms of tariffs and other restrictions, Malaysia is fortunate to have within its own ASEAN Now Malaysia 2025
Chair of
is the
ASEAN.
chair of the ASEAN.
Yep.
So we have an overdrive kind of a position. Then the ASEAN plus 3, when you bring in Japan, Korea and China, and then now it is blossomed into a further elaboration into RCEP. So this gives you a total of about 15 countries and so on. So the trade within the region and the strong trading partnership that has been forged very long time ago and further strengthened, this will be an advantage that continues. But our government also has been looking at this, the threats from external factors. We are becoming a member of the BRICS.
Yes.
The BRICS is another consortium or a group of people opening up new trade opportunities. And Malaysia is also leading within the OIC countries in terms of empowering the halal industry. We have gone a long way. Islamic finance. Last year we hosted, I think Malaysia hosted the Islamic banking and finance. And these are new opportunities for us to improve our relationship with the external. And so hopefully there will be a counter balancing effect from any negative impact from the US-led kind of trade barriers.
No, I think that's a great sort of like summary, because I think what we've done is we've expanded our trade relations.
Good.
We've expanded and diversified our trade partners, and not just being reliant on single source trading expectations for us to be able to generate our economy. And I think the leaders are on the right track at this point of time. Now, in the KSI report, it mentions potential implications of policies. You spoke about the US having trade tariffs, especially with Trump in power. The whole world is watching with this new administration that's coming in under US President Donald Trump. How can Malaysia strategically navigate these challenges in 2025? And are there any concerns that you would highlight?
Yeah, whether we take the US narratives now very seriously, I think we have to be mindful that these narratives are now ongoing. We cannot just ignore them. But in reality, when Trump gets into the White House and start making real policies, and of course the priority and the prime move would be to make America great again.
As per Trump's slogan.
As his slogan. But to what extent Malaysia and ASEAN will position itself to counter this or to have a conflict kind of an arrangement, I do not know. But the navigation is that we are very neutral in this aspect. So if one door is closed in some ways, there are many other doors that are likely to happen. And I, for one, would be watching very closely the Trump initiatives on the narratives or the speeches that he has given on the campaign trail and what he would do as a president within the oval room of the White House.
Are there any specific threats that you're watching out for?
Well, it's difficult at the moment because we are not on the radar. I think ASEAN, China is on their radar. China.
Yes.
And we are very worried because China and Taiwan, that sort of a conflict is likely to involve the region.
Yep.
And we try as best as possible not to get involved in this, and hopefully it is not. The South China Sea would still be available for everybody's use, not on a singular sort of domain, anything. But when it comes to Middle East and the other regions, particularly Europe and so on, the effects of this trade wars and anti-globalization move also affect many nations in Europe, particularly with the sort of industries that have gone out of Europe into different parts of the world, particularly China. So this is something that we have to watch and navigate as we move in 2025.
As we watch the global changes, a lot of economic policies are turning very protectionist,
right.
As well as echoing that MAGA campaign, making their own countries great again, and everyone's a little bit more individualistic at this point of time. I'm hoping that we have this trade connections that we'll be able to keep our doors open. Now, with Bank Negara expected to maintain the OPR at 3%, how do you foresee this policy influencing inflation, borrowing costs, and overall economic activity?
Yeah, there are two aspects to this, because the OPR and interest rate are part of the monetary management of the economy. These are monetary tools traditionally used. But when it comes to an inflationary pressure on the economy, traditional Western economies have always used the interest rate as a mechanism to bring down the inflation. So you're having a nexus between interest rate and inflation. But fortunately, Malaysia did not find the inflation rate to going to very high level. I think we looked at it, I think now it is hovering around 2% or so. But the recent report from Bank Negara indicates that there is some inflationary pressure on the economy. If there is an inflationary pressure on the economy, then you will find that there may be even an adjustment to the OPR rate. I'm not sure it will immediately trigger from 3.0 to any other level, 25 basis points or not, but you cannot rule out that. Now, this inflationary pressure is also due to higher consumption and the lack of production. I mean, just to go back to our basic economics, basic economics, one tends to look at is, what is inflation? Too much money chasing too few goods. That's the nutshell of the thing.
Which is essentially what we are facing at this point in time. There's concern that prices have gone up substantially, especially food prices, and the basic human rights, as you're talking about, are hard to reach at this point in time. How will this impact inflation? And more importantly, how adverse will be the impact on the average Malaysian household? Everyone is complaining and feeling it.
Yeah, we've taken this up with the authorities, particularly the statistics department of the country. When you talk about core inflation and headline inflation, the ordinary people on the street, you can call whatever, but we find the prices have gone up. And prices have gone up not in multiples of single digits, but in double digits. So this is a concern of the people. And government, any government, will not be able to tolerate this. You have to do something. So price control have come in. I mean, recently, just before Deepavali, just before Christmas, and now before Chinese New Year, and then Hari Raya, you find that government is putting a lot of pressure. But the counter effect is that our production costs have gone up. How can we maintain a low price? So I see, particularly in the area of food, our food agriculture production, we still are at low end. So we haven't, despite the government incentives and others that have come out, our production is not sufficient. We still import a lot of food.
So much. And I was just speaking to Datin Paduka Fatima yesterday on food security, the chair as well for food security. And we're talking about also the currency, because it affects our import, because we import so much food. And KSI projects the ringgit could strengthen to 3.9 to 4 ringgit against the US dollar. So that's interesting news that's upcoming. Contingent on high global oil prices and increased foreign investments. So there are a lot of sort of like players and stakeholders. However, potential downside risks include global financial stress and rising interest rates. And how do you anticipate the ringgit will perform in 2025? I know that's sort of like a loaded question. And what measures can Malaysia implement to ensure currency stability? Because we use that as a general benchmark marker for a lot of things.
Yes, I think generally, I think people are looking for a strong ringgit. But whether the strength of the ringgit is based on our domestic economic conditions and the exports, or due to investments that are coming from overseas, foreign direct investment, because your price, the ringgit price, the value is dependent on the demand for ringgit outside. And if there is more money is flowing from outside, then more people want to buy the ringgit, then the ringgit value will go high into that one. So in terms of the announcements that have been made from the foreign direct investment, recently we also have said that Malaysia's production facilities, particularly in the electronics and electrical area, is very good. Meeting the international requirements and so on. But when it comes to chips, which are components in the manufacture of computers and related fields, and also data centers. So there's a large pool of data centers, and then of course government recently announced also we will go into the chip industry as well.
And speaking of that, because there's a lot of conversation and much has been touted about this foreign investments in data centers, and the question is, will they benefit Malaysia significantly? Because we are talking about massive use of power and water, which might impact local industries and households. What are your thoughts on this, Datuk Seri?
Yes, I think first, any investment into Malaysia is good.
It's good, okay.
All right. But that's only half the story.
Right.
The half of the story. The other half of the story is that, is this investment really bringing in foreign direct investment in terms of foreign money into here, or it is only nominal money, and then the remainder of the money that is used for the infrastructure development is sourced within the country, then it doesn't really help us in the way.
Right.
And some of these data centers and very high-tech industries use very little labor force, but these are very highly trained and very highly educated labor force. So in terms of employment creation, are they doing the right things? So these are the questions that will come. And then going back to the earlier one about the tariffs and things like that, in the American scenario, you'll find that Biden, the outgoing president, has said that we will curtail the sale of chips and anything that is related to the sensitive industries, which are growing in large number.
Hence the protectionist sort of
policies.
Protectionist
things. Malaysia is not on the target, but Malaysia is on the second tier. In other words, the most favored good friends, we will give you whatever you want. But those people who are not in line with our thinking, then we will have to be very selective. So you may not get the benefit because you have started all these industries here, but these people are now watching. Hey, we started with good faith, but now things, the tide and the wind outside there is somewhat against us.
Now let's look at the strategy for Malaysia's trade strategy with key partners. We're talking about China, US and other ASEAN nations that is going to shape the growth prospects in 2025. How do you foresee that?
Trade is very important. Your production and also your what we call goods that come, heavy goods that comes in for the production process. This continues. And ASEAN and China, on the one hand, has been empowering the trade volume, and others have been moving in the right direction. Whether the same can be said with the Europe and also with the US, and with BRICS now, we have got a foothold in other parts of the world. In Africa, South Africa would come in, and Brazil and Peru and that kind of countries. This is an evolving process. So as long as Malaysia performs its production center and the role that is done previously, whether they are Germans, whether they are Japanese, whether they are Koreans, whether they are Chinese, this will continue. But now there is one other danger that comes in, is that China comes in very strongly here to put in. If China sourced production is now in Malaysia, there is a possibility that the tariff barrier that comes in, the country of origin they call it, although it is originating from Malaysia and we can certify so, it is actually a China product that is morphed or changed in Malaysia into, and we ourselves have got a policy.
Right.
In order for you to get the benefit, you must at least have local component of so much, 60% or 70%. So it is a sort of a double-edged sword that will come into. One, we want to attract this for global trade, but at the same time, we have to be very careful that we are not penalized because our relationship with some people were acceptable to other people, but some people are not acceptable to other people.
Thank you so much, Datuk Seri, for those insights and those forecasts and predictions for the year 2025. And to our viewers watching today, today's discussion has shed light on the intricate dynamics of Malaysia's economy as we look toward 2025. Now, from addressing potential challenges to identifying opportunities for growth and innovation, we see how careful planning, robust policies, and collaborative effort will play a critical role in driving our nation forward. And to all of us, thank you to all the viewers out there, thank you for joining us and being a part of this important conversation. The future of our economy depends on our collective awareness and action, and staying informed is the first step towards meaningful change. I'm ELANE, and we'll see you next time on The Nation for more in-depth discussions and conversations that matter. Bye for now. Thank you so much, Datuk Seri. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, ELANE.
Thank you.